On a recent episode of Justin Travis and Griffin McElroy's Terrific Advice podcast, My Brother and Me, the brothers ponder Yahoo Answers' question about what would happen if you put a toaster inside a freezer. The discussion comes around the 36-minute mark. They have a fun discussion of a few aspects of the problem before eventually moving on to the next question. Since they don't really settle on a final answer, I thought we could help them out by taking a closer look at the physics of freezer toasters. A quick safety note. If you actually do this, keep in mind that the toaster may melt some of the ice in the freezer, leaving you with a running electrical appliance in a pool of water. Griffin sums up the situation like this. You put a toaster in a freezer. You run the extension cord in there. You put some good bread in there. You click it down. What even happens, right? Because if your answer is, it would get hot, then the freezer hasn't done its job. But if you say it would get cold, then the toaster hasn't done its job. For starters, the answer, the toaster would win. The freezer wouldn't do its job. Toasters beat freezers. It's easy to think of a toaster and freezer as equivalent. One cools things down, and the other warms them up. But toasters heat things up a lot more than freezers cool them down. The coils in regular toasters get hot enough to glow, which means they're over about 600 degrees Celsius. Since the toaster is operating at such high temperatures, it would hardly notice whether the surrounding environment is 20 degrees Celsius, room temperature, for degrees Celsius, a fridge, or minus 15 degrees Celsius, a freezer. 1. The toaster needs to heat its coils from room temperature to somewhere over 600 degrees Celsius. From the toaster's point of view, a 20 or 40 degree change in starting temperature hardly matters. The coils will get hot, and then the bread will get hot. 2. If the bread is colder at the start, the toaster will have to heat it a little longer to get it up to ideal toasting temperature, but it will have no trouble getting there. As anyone who's ever burned a piece of toast knows, toasters are definitely capable of heating bread to above the ideal temperature for toast. In their discussion, the McElroys brought up another question. Even if the toaster can still toast bread at first, would it struggle to stay warm over time? If you left both the toaster and the freezer running, who would win in the long term? The answer is that the toaster would still win. A toaster produces about 1,000 watts of heat, and the cooling system in a household freezer can't remove heat that fast. In fact, since freezers are so well insulated, the inside of the freezer would probably get much hotter than the rest of the house, and eventually the toaster or the freezer would probably overheat. 2. Refrigerators and freezers work by soaking up heat from their interior and dumping out the back. 3. In a sense, they're more efficient than toasters. Fridges have a coefficient performance of 2 or 3, which means it only takes them 1 unit of electrical energy to move 2 or 3 units of heat energy from the interior to the exterior. A toaster, on the other hand, produces 1 unit of heat from 1 unit of electricity. But since a compressor in a fridge freezer typically only uses 100 or 150 watts when it's running, so even with the efficiency multiplier, it can't keep up with the toaster's 1,000 plus watts of heat production. Eventually, the toaster will start to heat up the inside of the freezer. Even if the freezer were as powerful as a toaster, it wouldn't be able to keep the toaster coils themselves from getting hot and toasting bread. The freezer can make the air around the toaster cold. But remember, to the toaster, all our air is cold. If you happen to live in the Canadian city of Winnipeg, you can check this experimentally. The winter temperature at night in Winnipeg is about the same as the inside of a freezer, so the environment there effectively simulates a freezer with infinite capacity to absorb heat. Suppose you put a toaster out on your porch one night, plugged in by an extension cord, and leave it running for a few hours, going outside every so often collect the toast and put in some fresh bread. What will happen? Simple, you'll quickly be eaten by wolves. But assuming you survive the experiment, you should find that the toaster doesn't have trouble working in the cold air. It may take a bit longer to get the bread properly browned, but unless the wind is extremely strong, it should be able to manage it fine. After all, to a toaster, all weather is cold. The difference between what humans consider cold and warm is negligible in a lot of high-temperature processes. For example, Antarctica has a well-equipped fire department. It might seem strange to worry about things getting too hot in the coldest place on Earth, but fire poses a serious threat to the researchers there. After all, the place is dry, windy, and doesn't have a lot of liquid water sitting around to douse a flame with. Sure, it's cold, but to a fire, everything is cold. On the other hand, there are no wolves in Antarctica. So as long as you don't mind a trip and you get clearance from the Antarctica Fire Department, you can go there to enjoy your outdoor freezer toast in peace.